Hello, Aldwyn Altuney here. Thank you so much for joining us. I am with the amazing Paul Seils. He is from Stop 5G Global, and he was at a protest in Brisbane yesterday where there were thousands of people coming together to stand for freedom of the people. Hello, Paul. Welcome.
Hello, Aldwyn. Great to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you here. I saw you on 7 News last night. I was so proud of you getting on camera and saying your bit.
Thank you. It was great. It was great.
What actually happened? Yeah, it was a really good following by the look of it. And it was a peaceful protest as well, from what I could see.
It was very peaceful. It was great, Aldwyn. You know, there's numbers of a little bit. There's a bit of a range between several thousand, maybe up to 8,000 people or something at the event in Brisbane, and also nationally in the other cities, including Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, etc. yesterday. So it was great. We had a great turnout.
And there was a lot of, it was sort of like chanting of the same kind of message. So can you just repeat some of the messages that were happening yesterday at the protest?
Well, the cross-section of people there, the community at the protest, were talking about and wanting to draw attention to different things, Aldwyn, including, you know, first and foremost, like questioning the legitimacy and the reasoning behind the lockdowns first. You know, this is really quite an extraordinary and monumental occasion in the history of humanity. Not since maybe the Occupy movement in 2011 have we seen something, and we're collectively experiencing an event on this scale where we're all sort of being subjected to something simultaneously. So people are talking about wanting to question the reasoning and the legitimacy of the lockdowns. They're talking about primarily in the southern states, they're driven by the forced or the vaccination coercion agenda. And then people are talking about also their concerns about 5G and the 5G rollout particularly during these lockdowns. So yeah, it's multifaceted. What people are concerned about. So we had a great turnout. We did get some coverage on the news. Channel 7 gave us the event some great coverage. Tom, I forget his last name, that covered the event, was quite positive. Didn't make us out to be a bunch of crazy tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists, which normally the mainstream media has a tendency to brush us with. But it was quite a level and balanced report and coverage that we received. So that was great.
Yes, that is good. And, you know, it's interesting because some of the media are saying, oh, there was no social distancing rules in place at these protests. I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
That's a long conversation to have, you know. So, you know, we're going to be indelibly etched with these terms like flattening the curve and social distancing and all that sort of thing. So it's you know, people were very responsible. The police and the authorities that were there were great. There wasn't a large number of turnout for police in Brisbane that some of the other states and cities like Sydney and Melbourne experienced. I think Melbourne had like 200 police, reportedly had 200 police, and whereas Brisbane maybe only had about 10 or 12. And we acknowledge them for their contribution. And you know, there's some people doing some great work with the authorities, and it's a difficult time for them to have to deal with some of these circumstances. And some of those people in those bodies are also questioning what's happening as well. They sort of found themselves in this place at this point in time, and we're all collectively trying to navigate our way out of what is really happening and why it's happening, etc., and trying to navigate that with a bit of sense of clarity and purpose, and dealing with the circumstances powerfully, Aldwyn.
Yes. Well, I call it physical distancing. And you know, some doctors I've spoken to, they say viruses don't jump 1.5 meters. But anyway, you know, these are rules, right? And obviously rules are there to be followed, I guess. Because that's how the world works, right?
Yeah.
You know, however, you know, at the same time, I must say, ever since COVID came about, I just had this gut feeling in my stomach that something stinks with this whole thing, that we are not being told the whole truth. And, you know, and we can see now there's a push for forced vaccinations. The 5G towers have still been going up during lockdown. The one world currency system, you know, they're trying to get rid of cash, right? And you know all about that, having done the Block Conscious Summit, of course, in Brisbane, you know, all about the cryptocurrency space. So what are your thoughts about all of that? Like, what did you think when all of this came about a few months ago, when, you know, when the economy was forced to crash pretty much, people had to shut businesses, and, you know, suddenly everyone was on the dole queuing up at Centrelink. What were you thinking back then?
Well, it's great. It's a great question, Aldwyn. The first thing is that, you know, for some of us that are a bit more introverted, we've been practicing social distancing for a while, so it's not affected us too badly. And some people probably needed to wash their hands a bit more often than what they were previously.
Yeah,
so,
right.
But yeah, there's something that certainly very much that doesn't fit common sense in relation to the narrative that people have been force-fed through the mainstream media, and that's that. As I mentioned and got coverage on the news in that tiny snippet for a few seconds yesterday on Channel 7, was that it's been a grossly disproportionate response. The fact that you know, businesses have been shut down, people have gone into bankruptcy, doctors have come out publicly and said that there's been more suicides in the last month than what there has been in the previous 12 months. It's been a complete disproportionate response to the issue at hand. And we don't want to diminish anyone's roles, particularly the people that are in those emergency services and the doctors and nursing staff, etc., that are there to care for us, that we're very grateful for. It's just that when previously every year for over the last 10 years, 500,000 people have been dying every year from complications related to the common cold and flu. And now we're talking at just over 100 people in Australia alone, allegedly dying with COVID, maybe not necessarily from COVID, but with COVID, or whatever they want to term COVID, is that it's a completely, and it's a grossly disproportionate response for them to crash the whole economy and put everyone's livelihoods, put their health and well-being, their businesses, you know, put everything at risk, and will pretty much push it over the edge. We haven't seen the worst of it yet, Aldwyn. It's still relatively the quiet before the storm yet. People have created suggestive and predictive programming that's already been put in there. People like Fauci and Bill Gates have said that there's a second wave that's coming. So how do they know that there's a second wave coming unless there's a second wave coming? And yeah, it's been a completely disproportionate response. It's defied comprehension. It's very surreal. We live in the saying is, Aldwyn, may we live in interesting times, and we're certainly all doing that at the moment.
Absolutely. Well, I am a huge stand for truth and good news, because I think now, particularly more than ever, you know, it's so sad to hear of the number of suicides just in the last month. And, you know, the statistics are around the world, just in general, that about 1 million people take their own lives worldwide. And I believe that the news that we put out, the news we consume, and how we do our messaging in the world is really, really crucial to how we do life. And so in line with that, I'm launching a global good news challenge as of tomorrow. And it's just perfect timing, I think, because I think if people come more into gratitude for whatever is happening, I think will lift people's spirits and will create a more peaceful world, regardless of what's happening out there, right? Because we can't control what some of these people are doing, right? We can't control everything going on out there. We can control what we do and how we respond to what is happening. And so it was fascinating to see the thousands of people gather in Brisbane that obviously are not happy with what's happening, right? And they're making a stand. Yeah. And it was really great to see some of the placards saying, you know, it's not about anti-vax, it's about pro-choice. Right?
Yeah, and that's the thing as well. So obviously our group Stop 5G Global, we've been spent the last couple of years doing interviews with some of the leading doctors, professors and academics in the field of electromagnetic radiation. And, you know, we're certainly not, you know, hypochondriac technophobes. We enjoy and appreciate technology, but it can be done in a more safer way that doesn't have to be wireless. And whether you're talking about being exposed to, there's a lot of overlaps here. And there's a lot of agendas, as you mentioned previously, that are being taken advantage of because of these circumstances at the moment. And, you know, whether it's electromagnetic radiation or whether it's the issue of vaccination coercion, soon as people start being dictated to and being forced to do something without their consent, that's when the people start to get disgruntled and rightfully and legitimately want to start rising up and resisting those sort of measures and laws being forced upon them.
Now, there was a group in Service Paradise today, Simeon and Sue and a few others, that were testing some of the 5G towers in Service Paradise, and they're saying a real hotspot is around the McDonald's in Service Paradise, where there's very high levels of, I presume, some kind of radiation. I don't know the science behind it, but could you explain a little bit about, for those that don't know anything about 5G, a bit about the science behind what's happening?
Sure, Aldwyn, and that's that. You know what 5G means. It's the acronym for fifth generation technology. So we've had a bit of a shift between generations. So we had 1G, 2G, 3G. The technology that evolved and enabled things like text messaging, and then from moving that to video. So fifth generation and above implies short wave and high intensity signal strength. So what that means is that towers and then antennas will need to be placed almost as close as every couple of 100 meters. So you'll constantly, you won't be able to avoid being exposed to electromagnetic radiation. That's just on the towers. And you got to think at the moment, still the levels are relatively low because not many people in the population have 5G phones and devices at the moment. And that'll become exponential as companies try to do things like give people 5G phones so that they can go on their phone plans, etc. But yeah, that sort of ramps up. We had people at the event yesterday in Brisbane as well with RF meters and just showing how intense the signals are in those locations. And the irony was that we probably had it in the middle of the city where it's in Brisbane at the front of the town hall, which is very hot as far as electromagnetic radiation is concerned. And there's a lot of people that wanted to be there that suffer from EHS, and which I never knew was a condition until a couple of years ago. It was like EHS people suffered from electrohyposensitivity, and it was like, come on, that's got to be in your head. But more and more doctors are coming out about it and speaking about it publicly, and their concerns about 5G radiation, electromagnetic radiation from all the devices, including mobile phones, wireless technology. But what the technology will be able to do, what their agenda is that it makes the whole machine much more efficient. So but through smart meters, they don't need to read meters anymore. Through shopping, you can have smart fridges. You can have smart televisions that record and track and document all the shows that you're watching. So it's basically a huge, marketing. It's like just this bloated form of socialism and an Orwellian. Someone described it as an Orwellian wet dream, about what's possible in relation to mass surveillance. And the thing is, too, is that talking about, this is my background about like privacy and my limited experience, and getting to interview people that have a lot of knowledge in the field of blockchain and technology and that sort of thing, is that what 5G actually does is enables far superior levels of mass surveillance. So everything that you do, they want to, like you've mentioned, they want to outlaw cash. The head of the World Health Organization, WHO, came out in the early stages of this and said that it was all being spread by cash, which they may come out and make these statements and have no conclusive evidence for it whatsoever. So yeah, it makes surveillance. It creates through the integration of a social credit system, and people sort of think, oh, that's just China. Only countries like China doing that. No, that's actually been trialed in most countries in the world, including Darwin. There was a trial for the social credit system. So the social credit system, with the integration of the technology and your phone and your app and your devices and your banking Aldwyn and your location tracking about where you are every minute of the day, whether your phone's turned off or on, where you're spending your money, that you've been a good person, that you've turned up to your job that day, and that you've left when you said you would, and that you've paid your taxes and you've paid your fines, and that'll integrate with telling you whether you're allowed to, you know, buy certain things, or whether you'll be able to travel, or you'll be able to go to this location. And that data also integrates with some of the, you know, what they call the digital ID tracking with, you know, as Aldwyn had all her vaccinations, you're not allowed to go to New South Wales, you're not allowed to go to New Zealand unless all your vaccinations are up to date, that you've paid all your taxes, that you've got no fines outstanding. So it's like, it integrates with all that mass surveillance. And then the issues that people are talking about with the electromagnetic radiation is contributing to a lot of things. We've seen escalated rates of you know, cancers and tumors and that sort of thing, not just in relation to radiation. There's a lot of poisoning that we're being exposed to as well, whether it's in our water or in our air or in our glyphosates in our food, etc. All those things collectively contributing to, like we said, tumors and health problems, chronic fatigue, and then also, you know, just infertility rates just falling through the floor, miscarriages, all those sort of things. And I've done a lot of interviews with a lot of amazing minds and professors, and including a guy called Arthur Furstenberg, who wrote the book called The Invisible Rainbow. And yeah, he said we've just sort of basically been cooked up like the proverbial frog in the pot of water with 2G and 3G and 4G, and it's had an electromagnetic radiation has a cumulative effect in the body over a period of time. And now we're just sort of, we're seeing all these and experiencing all these things. We'll look back on this point in time, and our children or our children's children would look at it and say, how is it possible that you guys couldn't have known that these things were contributing to this? And George Orwell once said, in one of his quotes is that if you want to see the future of humanity, when he was, we assume that he was talking about artificial intelligence, but if you want to imagine the future of humanity, imagine a boot stomping on a human face indefinitely. And that's the thing. We want to be able to embrace technology, but it's like, who gets to choose whether those what the intentions are behind that technology are. And when I spoke publicly yesterday, we wrote a speech called Who Watches the Watchers? It's like, who is like watching these people that are putting things out? And yeah, talking about things like encryption and why encryption's important, and why people need to, you know, people already under 3 and 4G technology in most of the Western countries, definitely, including, you know, we know it's been happening in places like China, but in places like the Western countries. So when we talk about the Five Eyes Alliance, it's Australia, New Zealand, Canada, UK, and the US, of course. So all that data is all being collected already. All that data, every phone call, every text message, all your internet browsing history, all that stuff is being collected. So my background as a privacy advocate has been, our concern is the fact that even the, people just say, oh, if you're not doing anything wrong, you've got nothing to worry about. But our concern about this moving forward, particularly while we're drifting very rapidly into this state of draconian tyranny and totalitarianism, is that, well, I'll get to, okay, this point in 10 years time, anyone that's been doing anything that we consider and we make illegal, like having a Zoom call and talking about someone about like being outspoken about the government, we're gonna take action against those people retrospectively. And we're sort of, you know, people are rapidly losing their rights, and unless they're prepared to be outspoken and expose these things, then they'll just be taken advantage of until the point that they won't really have any, what's left of their rights, they won't have any left of them if they don't stand up and start educating themselves about their rights and what's actually going on at the moment.
Yes, and look, it's amazing. There is a shift happening, I believe, in the world. I mean, it's amazing how many truth groups there are now on Facebook, truth seekers, truth speakers. You know, people are sick of the mass media lies. And I'm sure there are some journalists doing, you know, the best they can, you know, in reporting what they see as the truth. But the fact is that, you know, there are press releases going out that, like, you know, press releases for what happened with 9/11 were ready to go before the towers went down. You know, like, what the hell? You know, like, there's, you know, it's just, people are not stupid. People are waking up, right? And if I believe if we have a 15% shift in consciousness, we can affect the whole world. We can shift the whole world. And it's interesting to see, just since COVID's come about, the kind of censorship that we've been seeing on Facebook, on YouTube. You know, the interview that Brian Rose did with David Icke, who we've both interviewed, of course, that, you know, that went viral, like 10 million views in a week. And, you know, suddenly David Icke's YouTube channel gets taken down with 1 million followers, gets taken off YouTube, you know. So now there's a, you know, there's a big argument about freedom of speech and freedom of information.
Yeah, and Facebook. He was removed by Facebook and also from PayPal as well. So it's interesting.
Well, Facebook have all these fact checkers now. Well, I'd like to know who their fact checkers are, right?
Yeah. Well, we know that the fact checkers are actually, they're programmed bots. So they go in and they look for keywords. And it's interesting because here we are a couple of days after recently that Donald Trump signed in the act around you know, interrupting what's been happening. We've allowed Frankenstein monsters to be created with the likes of Twitter and Facebook now, to the point where they're actually controlling public opinion, and Cambridge Analytica and those companies that were like controlled to be able to manipulate people's emotions and feeds and delete and block posts and that sort of thing as well. We've even, our group on Facebook, our Stop 5G Global, has been shadow banned. So even if you typed in Stop 5G Global, it doesn't come up unless you've been referred within the group and invited within the group. You won't actually find it anymore. So people like Mark Zuckerberg have come out publicly and said that we've got the ability to be able to, we will be shutting down any posts and groups in relation to 5G, vaccination and lockdown protests, etc. So yeah, these monstrosities have been allowed to grow out of control, and now they're sort of starting to call the shots. So it's good to see him step in and jam the wrench in the gears to sort of slow this down a little bit. But there is very much an awakening happening. It's more people are having this conversation about what's really going on, and the mainstream media is starting to really just show themselves to be puppets for the agenda that's playing out at the moment. People are turning to social media now, and to people like yourself, Aldwyn, to try and get some of the information, because they know that information that's being put out by most of the mainstream media, there's good journalists there that are doing great work, but most of the stuff that gets shoved down people's throats on television and mainstream media has an agenda. It's called programming for a reason.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, having been a journalist myself for many years, working with News Limited and APN newspaper group, and having worked in TV, radio and print, I can tell you there were times the editors would say to the journalists, go out and get this angle, and the angle wasn't there. And we'd have to, you know, scramble to try to find some people that would support a certain agenda, right? So I can tell you, as an insider who's worked in the media, there are hidden agendas going on. There are people who own the media organizations that are pushing certain points of view down people's throats. And, you know, if you're gullible enough to swallow the pill, you know, blue pill or red pill, right? It's like the Matrix playing out as well, right? Which pill are you taking, the blue pill or the red pill right now? You know, it's really interesting to see how it's all unfolding. And, you know, just back to the, you know, the radiation of mobile phones and Wi-Fi, it blows me away how many people are dying of brain tumors. You know, just in the last few years, the number of people that in their 40s, you know, that are passing away with brain tumors. This is really, really concerning. And it's often where they have the phone to their ear, you know, so and in the fine print, it actually says with a lot of mobile phones to keep the device 20 centimeters or 200 millimeters from your body, right? And there's guys carrying them around their pockets, and, you know, so just be aware there's going to be effects.
Yeah,
right?
well, you're right, Aldwyn, and that's the thing as well. You know, we're there to sort of share information and educate people as much as possible, and also offer solutions as well, and educate people about solutions. There's a lot of people in this space that are doing great work all over the world. You know, we're just a bit of an aggregator of some of that information. There's a lot of there's a lot of groups out there doing things, and we talk to people. We've run some physical events, and we also run online events. And interestingly enough, I'll send you the link as well. There's the replay of the 5G Crisis Summit happening, starts tomorrow. It's free to register and watch. Josh DeSoul's event. He's got, I think it's over 40 speakers, doctors, lawyers, barristers, leading health professionals over the world. It's got an opening address by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. that I'm also fortunate enough to have been involved in. And that launches tomorrow. It runs over across about 6 days. I think it's the 1st to the 7th. I'll send you the link for that, for people, anyone that's watching that wants to tune in as well. It's free to join, and covering off a lot of information where people are talking about all the different facets of 5G, electromagnetic radiation, health and well-being. And we're out there telling people to, don't put the mobile phone next to your head. Always use earphones wherever possible. Minimize your mobile phone usage where possible. A lot of people are going back to landlines again, the good old-fashioned landline like grandma used to have. But don't sleep with your Wi-Fi on. Avoid Wi-Fi if you can. Always go with your internet connectivity with cabling, particularly for children. They're saying children, Aldwyn, are 10 times more susceptible to, because their brain's formative. Children are 10 times more susceptible to electromagnetic radiation. Getting rid of Wi-Fi out of schools altogether. People can get access to technology with running cables to the unit without having to have Wi-Fi, and just minimizing the exposure wherever possible. But that's the issue, is the concern is that with the agenda that they're running out, all these 5G installations in places like schools at the moment, funnily enough, in places like schools and close by to childcare centres and all those sort of things, is that we're seeking a moratorium on that. They have no evidence. They have done no research to prove that the technology and because it's a military grade technology that's been commercialized, and they have no proof of evidence whatsoever. There's been no trials to prove that that's been done. And if people are going to, if people that are in those positions of authority in those councils or municipalities, if they are going to allow that to proceed, legal action needs to be taken to hold them personally and legally accountable for that. And that's something that people have just sort of allowed and acquiesced and given their power away too much to these people to make these decisions, or even not even be aware of it. Because that's the thing, right? It's like electromagnetic radiation, you can't see it. You can't, for some of us can't feel it. It's unseen. So people are just we're getting heated up like the proverbial frog in the saucepan at the moment. Like Charles Handy refers to it in his book called The Age of Unreason, where that's slowly turning the heat up.
Yes, it's very interesting. And, I do believe in the power of the people. There's a great little cartoon on YouTube called Tiny Dot, and I'm going to put the link under here, because the tiny dot shows a graphical representation of the masses of people that are you and I, the masses of people, and then the tiny dot is the US congressman, right? And the tiny dot says to the big masses, you must do this. And the big masses go, oh, must we, right? Oh, must we really do this? So I'm going to put that link in there just so that you get a bit of an idea of what's actually happening here. And I do believe that if the people come together and say enough is enough and fight for our freedoms, as I saw with the footage from the protest yesterday in Brisbane. And, I was actually moved to tears when I saw that this morning. I was moved because I thought, thank goodness the people are coming together, working together peacefully, from a loving space, peacefully, to stand for our rights and stand for our freedoms. And, it's a beautiful thing. And I think moving forward, there's a lot we can do. So what are some tips you give us in wrapping up today? What are some tips for people watching this right now? What can they do to support the truth movement and to make a difference with all the matters we've talked about?
Yeah, well, they can. We've got our website, which is Top 5G Global, which lists a lot of the interviews that we've done with the leading health professionals and doctors and professors all over the world. And you can go onto that website and subscribe there. There's also our Facebook. We're in the process of integrating off those social media platforms and into something that's a bit more secure. People need to form and either join or form their own local Stop 5G group. And like I said, this is really just the tip of the iceberg at the moment. There's a lot of people that are taking legal action that's behind the scenes. I think we'll find it was great turnout. It was amazing energy, Aldwyn, the people coming together, doing things in a proper way, letting people speak, people that just turned up and showed up. The energy was absolutely amazing. People just like start talking, having these conversations, joining groups or forming them if there's none available at the moment. And they also need to be aware of, like, we're aware of what's happening in the US at the moment. And one thing I wanted to say before we wrap up too is there's a lot of things that are happening. People just need to be aware and also be conscious of the fact that there's agendas happening where there's agent provocateurs that are amongst the people that are like deliberately creating upheaval and disharmony with the groups. And yeah, people should be really aware that those sort of things are happening. Where I saw a particular bit of footage from the US, from Minnesota, where there was this guy that was dressed in a face mask and was fully covered with his face mask and hat, and was wearing black and carrying an umbrella and walking around with a ball peen hammer and just like smashing all the windows in the shops or whatever. Just they'll just look for people that are catalysts to try and that are deliberately placed in carrying out acts of espionage and just against the people to set it up, and then people just they light the fire and then let the people to fight it out. And people should be aware of what's happening. And as you said before, there is an awakening that's going on. People staying heart-centered, joining together, coming together in your local communities, meeting each other, joining each other through social media, and getting back together again and having cups of tea. There's stuff that they can do on all levels, whether it's letterbox shops, petitions, legal actions, a whole lot. It needs to be a multifaceted front. But it's not only just the technology, whether people are talking about 5G or vaccinations or all these issues. We're about to go through a really tough time. And I don't say that because it's fear orientated. It's just what they're doing with the controlled demolition of the economies is just going to be, it's an unraveling of sorts for a reconstruction to take place. And it's going to be a little bit rocky ride for a while. So people need to get together and start connecting with each other and supporting farmers markets, or growing food and making sure that they're living sustainably. And there's a huge upswing and upheaval of like sustainable living that's happening at the moment, and people growing food gardens and all that sort of thing, and supporting each other, get together and start supporting each other in their communities all over the world.
I do believe the light always beats the darkness, the love always beats the fear. And I think, kindness is a really big thing now. I think there is also a kindness epidemic happening now where people are really connecting, and, and be aware that there are trolls. I've had some trolls come onto some of my posts that have made some really nasty comments. And these are people I've never seen. I don't know them. A lot of them come out of America, so just be aware there's trolls online too. So obviously I block those people and delete the comments. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I just say question everything, right? Don't just believe what you're told in the mainstream media. Question everything, do your own research so you can make an informed choice. And thank goodness there are so many people gathering together now and actually questioning. People are questioning, and I do believe it's like the 100 monkey syndrome, right?
Yes.
I think the 100 monkeys in one part of the world make a shift, and monkeys from the other side of the world make that same kind of shift, right? Well, I think this is happening now. I think there is definitely a shift in consciousness happening. And I think people have had enough of the lies, and they want, people care about our health too. We don't want to be just, I don't want to be injected with any vaccine. If you want to be injected with vaccine, you go right ahead, but don't force it on me, right? I don't want that crap in my body. So that's my thoughts on vaccinations. So yes, we could talk a lot on this topic, Paul. So again, finally, to connect with you and to come to your group, where should they go? And another point is get your stuff off Facebook and YouTube, etc., and get your own websites happening too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't control what Facebook and YouTube do, right? You can control your own website. So
yeah, for people to create their own groups, obviously that the social media and the existing platforms was a great place for people to meet, and then move off into their own channels and create their own Telegram channels and their own websites with forums them. So you need to be connected locally in your local community. You need to be connected within your state, and you need to be connected within your country. And you know, some people, you talked about other solutions as well, Aldwyn. Even you know, I wouldn't have thought so much at this point previously, but at this point in time, even those people that are doing things as subtly as like meditation, you know, we're joining together, we're forming together, we're creating the hive mind, which is us coming together. And when we get to different points in time, us having that organic connectivity with each other will be enough for us to know intuitively what it is that we need to do to be able to navigate what's before us.
Absolutely. And something I'm doing in line with that is the Global Good News Challenge, which is starting tomorrow. And that's, you know, very simple. It's just, you just say who you are, what you do, 3 things you're grateful for, and 1 piece of good news every day for 7 days, 14 days, or 21 days, absolutely free, to help lift people's spirits, reduce depression, anxiety, and suicide rates. That's what I'm doing, is helping to inspire more gratitude, and for people to see that, hey, things can always be worse. Yes, we've had a pretty crappy few months with what's been happening in the world. However, I think we will come through this, and we'll come through this stronger than ever as a people, as a collective. So thank you to everyone who is doing something about it. And if you have any interesting links, videos, etc., please pop them under this video. Out of Shadows is another fantastic documentary that has gone viral just in the last month or so. That had about 10 million views in a week as well. It's gone insane. And that's all about how we've come to believe what we have from the mainstream media, from Hollywood, etc. So there's lots of great information out there. So reach out. Any final words, Paul?
No, just thank you as well. Like, thank you for everyone that's watching this. Obviously, if you're watching this, you're part of the shift at the moment. You're part of this collective consciousness that's shifting at the moment. There's times that even myself, I'll drop into like periods of like overwhelm and anxiety, and just stay connected with community, and just know that it will get a little bit rough. Don't get played. Don't get caught in alternate agendas. That the whole divide and conquer narrative that they want to try and force us to feel small and powerless, I'd say. But for us to stay connected with each other, we do have what it takes for us to transition this period in time, and also to acknowledge you as well, Aldwyn, because I know that you've been on this path for some time, and you have also been very big about spreading and being that counter to spreading good news and positive vibes and love to the world as well. So thank you for what you bring to the world. That is your medicine. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I'm sending you love from across the Zoom, and I'm sending everyone love who's watching this. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you for what you do. Your Block Conscious Summit was unbelievable. And maybe we can do another interview about cryptocurrency and what's going on there.
Yes.
Have you got any updates on that quickly, actually, on cryptocurrency?
Well, I just want to say, just like there's multiple agendas that are coming across at the moment. We've been involved in cryptocurrency and that sort of thing as well, but there is an agenda there for them to try and crush the existing currency system that's there, to bring out a centralized, controlled, traceable, trackable, and taxable in real-time currency. So we're out and about educating people about that as solutions for other decentralized currencies that are available for people to be able to transact with each other that don't require banks and that sort of thing as well. So yeah, so there's exciting things coming. We're on the cusp of catching waves where there's also, as the duality of it all, that some of these challenges are occurring, but there's a renaissance of thought. There's a renaissance of sustainable living, of community, of realness and authenticity that's coming through as well. It's truly an exciting and astounding time to be alive, to be experienced, to experience and to witness what's about to come through.
And if you think of eternity and think of the short time that we have on the planet, right? Whether we live 100 years or 80 years or whatever, well, I mean, a third of people die by 65. So, we're only here for a smidgen of time if you think of eternity. And here we all are, and there's no coincidences. There's a reason we're here. There's a reason you're watching this now. There's a reason we're connecting. And I believe we are here to be catalysts for change if we choose to be, right? So it's all a choice. moment by moment choice. Are you going to come from love? Are you going to come from fear? Are you going to get educated? Are you going to start questioning things? Or are you going to bury your head in the sand, right?
Yeah.
So where are you coming from right now?
There's plenty of choices, Aldwyn.
That's right. Plenty of choices, plenty of choices. And I know you need to go, Paul. Thank you so much for your time here today. Any final words?
Yeah, no, just thank you for, I'm just blessed and humbled to be here to have this experience. And, you know, there's as much as the mainstream media wants to try and push this divide and conquer agenda, there's turn off your TV and just stay connected to community. And what's on the other side of this is really truly, like when they talk about the new normal, like we're not buying that agenda at all. Like the new normal is actually far more beautiful than what was normal before.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. Yeah, and it's amazing, you know, the number of people have been reaching out to me who I haven't heard from for ages, saying, are you okay? Which is really nice to see that, you know, people are reaching out and they're connecting with families and friends that maybe, you know, they might have had some misunderstandings in the past. People are looking to get those things resolved now and looking to move forward in a more peaceful manner. And I do believe that there's a breakthrough at the end of every breakdown, right? So this is
absolutely.
Short-term thing, nothing lasts forever. So we will get through this and we'll get through stronger. So thank you so much, Paul, for connecting. So again, to connect with you and the stop5gglobal.org, go to the website and the Facebook group. They'll need an invitation, right? Maybe we can put an invitation in the link here.
They will find a link on the website. So, but if they try to search for it on Facebook, it's been shadow banned, so they won't find it.
Got it. Okay, so stop5gglobal.org. Go there if you want to go and see what Paul's doing. Thank you so much, Paul, for your time. It was a very last-minute interview. We just came together. So thank you for changing your plans today and making time for this today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, Aldwyn.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's watching this. If you're watching this right now, what you can do is you can like, comment and share this post if you've got something out of this. Imagine if we all just shared this post. You can get involved also in the Global Good News Challenge as of tomorrow. I'll put the link under here as well in the chat if you want to spread more gratitude and generally lift your own spirits, which will lift those around you. Thank you so much.
I will also send you the link for the 5G Crisis Summit that starts tomorrow as well, Aldwyn. For anyone that's watching and wants to tune in and watch that, they can register for free.
Fantastic. Yes, we'll pop the link in the chat here as well, so anyone watching this can get access to that. That sounds brilliant. Thank you so much, Paul. You're a legend.
Fantastic.
Love your work. Love your work. Keep up the great work. And here's to more joy, more love, more peace in the world, more education, more insight, more wisdom. Here's to all of that. Thank you so much. Lots of love to all of you. And anything else to say, Paul? Anything else before we wrap up?
No, that's it from me. Much love to all.
Much love. Mwah.
Much love.
See you again soon. Bye for
Ciao.
now.
Bye.
Bye.